All right, awesome. Thank you. Hey, Scott, how are you?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. I love this show. I
Oh,
love the implementations. I'm just a huge Jurassic fan, so it's real. I think we spoke after season three, so this is real great to catch up with you again. Or
good.
season three of the Camp Cretaceous. But
Yeah.
so I want to get started with when you're sort of conceiving this show. It's a little more grown up, obviously, than Camp Cretaceous, and you're able to just get into the thick of the sort of action. Versus whereas last time you're kind of trying to show off some of the dinosaurs, this time you can focus more on these young adults. So what was kind of like the where this idea sort of stemmed from initially, and where did you want to sort of push Jurassic where we hadn't seen it go before?
Yeah. It all started, this is going back a number of years to, uh, they wanted to do another show, and I was like, Camp Cretaceous, we felt we had told the story, and I was like, good. I'm going to move on and do other things. But they wanted to do something else. And so I said, well, we need to know what's coming in this new movie, Dominion. This was before Dominion was even, I think they were still shooting it. And so we got on this big Zoom call with people from Universal, and it was so hush hush. They wouldn't show us anything from Dominion, but these two executives from Universal were describing to us what happens in it, and with some set stills and stuff. And I don't know. I just got this idea in my head about, well, what if we did this? What if we did a conspiracy thriller with the kids from Camp Cretaceous? What if we went ahead in time, and something terrible has happened and Brooklyn has been killed, and what that effect would have on everyone? And that's sort of where the whole idea stemmed from. It was like, how do we tell it was very much inspired by 1970s conspiracy thrillers, and how do we push the storytelling and mood and tone and the cinematography and lighting and pacing was a huge thing. It's like slowing things down a little bit, as opposed to how stories are told these days. So it was really just, how do we tell this different type of story in the Jurassic universe?
Yeah, absolutely. And then you do also, I noticed more so in season two, where you're using dinosaurs we haven't seen so far, like the Majungasaurus,
Mm-hmm.
the Atrociraptors. You also, obviously there's baryonyx as well. So since Dominion did kind of open, I think the show takes place before Dominion, but since it opens the world to dinosaurs living with humans, were you trying to scale back the dinos a little bit in season two compared to what we've seen in Camp Cretaceous and season one? And then are you saving some bigger reveals for, because there are fan favorites that you're seeing in like the opening credits and stuff.
Yeah, well, it's all in service of the characters. And when we started season one of Chaos Theory, we really started limiting ourselves to dinosaurs that had been released from the Lockwood estate, or who that could have potentially been on the Arcadia coming over from Isla Nublar. And then once we introduced the Beckel spinaxes and just sort of started expanding, like, okay, other types of dinosaurs are being created out there, it kind of opened it up for us. I'll be honest, part of it is also we have production limitations, as far as if I need a human character and I don't get to build a dinosaur character, or if it's a four-legged dinosaur, it takes even more production assets, which I don't know if anyone wants to hear about. But at the end of the day, we're trying to tell the story for these kids, and we're trying to look, when we get a chance to show a dinosaur that we haven't seen before, and the amazing work our design team does in creating them. Yeah, look, I love a T-Rex in every episode too, but it needs to make sense for the story that we're telling for these characters.
Yeah, so and then you also have, it's not often in animation where you get to see your character's age, but Chaos Theory gives you the opportunity to age up these characters that people have known for 5 seasons before. And so like this final, after we saw what everyone else had been up to, we finally get to see Brooklyn again. And she's been through a lot. So
Yeah.
what was kind of, because until you actually hear her like and see what she's been up to, because you're led to believe that something more nefarious might be going on. But then you meet Brooklyn again, and she's still Brooklyn, but she's caught up in this whole other bigger conspiracy. So what kind of led to her kind of changes, and then like her sort of physical, permanent sort of transformations?
Yeah, well, we knew that it was baked into the whole premise of the thing that Brooklyn, they were going to think Brooklyn was dead, but she wasn't. But we wanted that to feel more like, we didn't want, if it was just like, well, there was a lot of blood there, and we wanted to sell it as much as we could that something had happened to her and that they would plausibly believe that she had died. And then our supervising producers, Zae-Sung Kang, pitched the idea, well, what if she loses part of her arm? And it just clicked, like, well, it raises the stakes. It shows you that she didn't just like roll out of the way and everything was fine. It does something that they really haven't done much, if at all, maybe in the Jurassic franchise, in which a main character, actually gets hurt by a dinosaur. And then on top of it all, then it also gave us a chance to give visibility to a vastly underrepresented community, the disabled community, the community with limb differences. You don't see a lot of it on television, and even less of it in kids' television. Or they're usually like a side character. So it gave us the opportunity to tell that story as well. So it just like, once we kind of stumbled upon the idea of doing it that way, then it just like everything sort of came together for the character. And the fact that this traumatic injury, this limb difference, this acquired limb difference now, it still doesn't define Brooklyn. It informs her character, but her whole character isn't just about, I'm missing my left hand now.
Yeah. And then you also have, there are quite a few romantic entanglements that you set up in season 1 that you're seeing a lot through flashback, and in season 2 kind of, it's hard to pick up some of those threads because of Brooklyn also being live, but they don't obviously know it. So how's the Kenji and the Kenji and Darius dynamic sort of evolving? You kind of see the men fences, but now obviously everything's kind of been thrown for a loop, and then now Ben's involved with what he's been kind of withholding from the team.
Yeah, I mean, it's really fun. Like, you really we've not been very kind to any of these kids since the beginning of Camp Cretaceous, and we're not making things any easier, especially for Kenji. So, where we kind of pick up, we start the series with Brooklyn's death has kind of sent these repercussions, these drastic repercussions throughout the camp fam. And now, we're ending season 2 with Brooklyn's being alive. It's going to have, also like cataclysmic effect on people within the group and their relationships. And not everyone's going to be feeling the same kind of way with how the end of season 2 goes down. So hopefully moving forward, we'll get to explore more about, well, what are the repercussions within this group? We always want to try to take the characters someplace we haven't taken them before, but a place that makes sense with their growth and evolution as characters.
Yeah, and speaking of the ending of the season, you have I guess this will come out after the season's already out. So Santos is back. So Santos you also brought back Deacon Lockman, who is great in the role in the movie as well. So how did that come together? Was that something that you had mapped out before Dominion ever came out, or was that because we do see her in Dominion, obviously, but we know what eventually happens to her, so how did that all come together, getting Deacon back, and then was that mapped out before the movie, or was that something that came together after the movie came out?
No, it came together, when we first started figuring out Chaos Theory, none of us had seen Dominion yet, because it was during COVID, and they were still, I think they were in post-production, and were finishing up. So a bunch of us involved in the leadership of the show and the writers, and we went over to Universal to see an early cut of the movie and a different beginning of the movie than what currently is in there. And so we watched it, and it's COVID, we're all in different rows with our masks and, watching this movie. And then, the Deachin's performance as Iona Santos, it really jumped off the screen to me, and as well to our head writer Bethany Armstrong Johnson. So after the screening, we just said, don't know how it makes sense yet. We don't know where it fits into things, but we got to get that character into the show. And luckily, Colin Trevorrow was all for it, because he's with us when we break the series, when we break the seasons. So Colin was all for it, and that's how it happened. We were just like, you watch Dominion, it's like, I want to know more about that lady all in white. And so that's how it all came together.
Yeah, and they also leave it on the table, so it's even more interesting what happens after. But so you also we learned this season, obviously because of the broker's plans, that there are dinosaurs not just in North America. There are dinosaurs possibly all around the world. So when you're mapping out the whole franchise with Colin, like obviously Gareth Edwards doing the next one, but when you're mapping out with the Jurassic Brain Trust with Frank Marshall and everybody, how's that work out? Like what like are you sort of trying to think about where they're going to be using dinosaurs in Rebirth, or are you kind of like, we can stay in this corner of the universe? Or
yeah, I mean, when we started, it was like, and when we started Chaos Theory, I don't even know if they knew they were making Rebirth. I know there wasn't a script for it yet. So we're sort of like, we're given a great deal of latitude as long as we're not breaking film canon. And and again, Colin reads every script, and we also, Frank is also involved in just making sure that we're not doing anything that we're not supposed to be. But I mean, the only thing that we were the only guardrails is basically don't go past Dominion. Don't go way past Dominion, because they didn't know where they were going next. So that was sort of our only guardrail as far as that goes.
Okay, that's awesome. And then, so you also, since you do introduce Soyana in this, is there a potential, because I mean, Brooklyn does go with her and then we ultimately know where she does end up, Santos in Malta. But is there any have you ever had any conversation about bringing more movie characters into the animated series? Because there's so many characters, so it's like, is there people that you've discussed possibly having, or is there a fan favorite that you'd want to bring in if possible?
Yeah, I don't want to get into spoiler territory,
Yeah,
but I mean, there's a lot of great characters in the films that we'd love to get in. If again, it has to make sense with our characters, and it also has to make sense within the films as well. We don't want, suddenly like our characters can't be in a scene that would have been in the movie or something like that. It's like, we've always tried to see things from going back to Camp Cretaceous, whether it's Masrani's helicopter crashing into the aviary, or the guy in the yellow slicker getting eaten by the Mosasaurus. Like, we like telling the story from a different point of view. But to answer your question, yeah, there's a bunch of characters I'd love to get into the show.
Yeah, and then going back to when, I remember, I mean, I don't know how much weight there was to the rumor, but there was some conversation that some of the Camp Cretaceous characters might possibly appear in Dominion at the time. Was that any actual truth to that rumor, or was that ever a conversation, or is that just something you don't want to get into?
I think that's sort of a wish list thing. There was a time, and this is a little insight. It's the Carnotaurus with the broken horn in Dominion. There was a short window when that almost turned out to be Toro from Camp Cretaceous, but it didn't. And it just, these things are really hard to sync up. So that was that was the closest to anyone from Camp Cretaceous actually being in Dominion,
I
I would
mean,
say.
yeah, I mean, every time you see a Carnotaurus now, it's you think of Toro. So,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
But and then you also like the season does end on another cliffhanger, and I feel like the cliffhangers in Chaos Theory are way more intense than the cliffhangers you left us with in Cretaceous. So where, because her friends they do have Bumpy's egg, they are kind of left behind as Brooklyn goes off to locations unknown. So like where does this story go, or where I don't know where's the kind of like the logical place that you see where like how they can reconnect or where what Brooklyn's up to versus what they're up to.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, the kids are sort of left like, wow, one, Brooklyn's alive, and two, she just turned her back on us and left with the bad guy.
Hmm.
So that, like I was saying before, everyone's going to be feeling a different kind of way about that. And that I would imagine would be would really cause some dramatic shifts in the relationships in the Cam fam. And as Brooklyn is going with Soyana Santos, and like you said, we know where she's headed. So I would imagine that Brooklyn's gonna be be there with her or be there on the way there. Again, Brooklyn's not in Dominion,
Yeah,
so but she's definitely with Santos now. So hopefully we get the runway to keep telling that story.
yeah, that'd be awesome. And then I do want to ask about animation real quick. It's like because Chaos Theory, because it was a really well kept secret, I think, for a lot of fans. And then when it got announced, everyone was, and then I mean the reviews are out of this world. Like it's just such a good show. So how long does sort of a season take? Was it about the same production timeline that Camp Cretaceous was, or how long were you guys working on this before the first season came out and season two was able to come out relatively quickly? So if when season three ideally gets announced sooner than later, but like when could we potentially see it?
Yeah, I mean, we make them as quick as we can, but it's a long process, and a lot of talented problem solving geniuses outside of this room who work really hard on this. So, I think I've had the original idea for Chaos Theory. I think it was around doing press for the final season of Camp Cretaceous. So I know, Bethany and I and Aaron were developing early ideas for Chaos Theory when I was still finishing up Camp Cretaceous. So, it takes time. It takes like a year to produce an episode of this from beginning to end. So, yeah, I hope we're gonna hear an announcement soon. Hopefully, people like the show, like season two. We're really proud of it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to keep you too long, so I have a couple, I think two quick ones. But the villains you've seen, like they were dinosaur villains initially in Camp Cretaceous because they are younger kids that are trying to survive dinosaurs. And as the series has progressed, you've seen sort of the transition to like these human villains who are oftentimes more terrifying than actual dinosaurs that are trying to survive. So when did you kind of, I guess, what's sort of like the philosophy behind the shift to as they are growing up, their villains also become more gray almost?
Yeah. Yeah. And not only the villains, like Brooklyn's become more gray as far as her decisions that she's making and what she has been up to. So yeah, it just felt like more of a natural, and you also can look, I love the dinosaurs. We're all here because it's called Jurassic. But we run from a lot of dinosaurs, but you don't want to do it all the time. And like you said, the people can be these villains and these people, they can, like you said, they can be more imposing. So we keep trying to raise the heat on these kids and painting them into smaller and smaller corners and just kind of winding them up and seeing how they figure it out. So they sometimes there's something that is more threatening than a T-Rex bearing down on you, and we definitely wanted to explore that.
Yeah, and it's like you can escape the dinosaurs, but you can't. The humans are a little more complicated. And I did the last one. Because I was
Sure.
really curious about the science behind this. Um, when the Atrociraptor and the Baryonyx communicate with the clicks, and it's something similar we saw in the first Jurassic World with the Indominus and the Raptors. So, what kind of research or what did you sort of discover about the clicking communication? Because I'm from what you see is like the Velociraptor kind of picks up on what the guy's doing. But is there any like further to that?
Well, I'd love to tell you that there's hard science backing it up, but I mean, it basically. I always loved the feeling in Jurassic Park when all of a sudden they discovered that the raptors could open doors. And, it's so long ago now, and we've seen these dinosaurs evolve over time, but I'll never forget the feeling I had when I first saw that door handle, and it was like, so what's the evolution of that for our show? And that just like, these things are so smart now. And where does it make sense? Where can we kind of tap into that same feeling I got in my stomach when that happened? So this was just sort of an evolution of that. It's like, how smart are these things? How smart are these dinosaurs? And that's sort of where it, we did different iterations. First, there was just sort of a communication, or there was going to be a tapping of the claw, and then the guttural impression of the snapping just is where we ended up. And I don't know. Yeah. So there's no scientists out there saying that would actually happen. But that was the vibe we were going for.
Yeah, no, you nailed it, Hunter. It was a perfect moment. I loved it. So awesome. I just had to ask. But thank you so much for your time, Scott. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much, man. I appreciate your time.